There are events in the lives of every generation that are so profound, so life-altering, so etched into our memories that when we look back, even decades later, we remember exactly where we were and what we were doing when we got the news.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
My brother and I were listening to Dinosaur Show on the radio, and they announced that Pearl Harbor had been attacked. Of course, we had no idea where Pearl Harbor was.
Playing football down at Westlawn Park, all of a sudden we noticed the neighbors in the houses around the park coming out on their porches. And I yelled over and said, "What's the matter? How come all you people are out there screaming at one another?" And I says, "Well, the Japs just bombed Pearl Harbor."
I was sitting in the living room at my parents' home, and we heard about Pearl Harbor.
When we found out that the country was going to be at war, naturally we were concerned. Both of us were about that age.
We cried, all of us boys, because we all knew we was going to have to go. And when they said go, we went. And the country went with us.
I'd never been out of the state of Kansas but one time, and that was in the Kansas City. Before, had no idea how big our country really is, or how beautiful it is.
Dad and mother were farmers, and so I lived on that farm until I guess I went to the service.
My dad folks lived in Oklahoma City. As far as I ever went, until it was amazing to see how wonderful, beautiful this country is, and how people was all united. We was all united.
My brother and I both enlisted in the Marine Corps. My brother was 14 months younger than I, but he was kind of the instigator, the leader of our group.
On November the 20th, 42, I enlisted. And they called me to active duty on the 13th of March.
My twin brother and I, we signed up and had the dad sign the paper so we can get in the Navy.
I had enlisted in the Army Air Corps. I had been told it was the most fascinating thing I could do. It was probably the most dangerous single service.
We registered for the draft, and I had a low number, not terribly low, but it was low. And so a lot of my schoolmates were already drafted.
You know, when you're just 18 years old and they tell you go, you go. You don't even question it.
We were sent down to San Antonio, and I was immediately, my training began.
Got orders to go to Bakersfield, California, and I was sent to Tulare, California, to fly a Stearman aircraft, a PT, what they called a PT-17.
Got on a Pullman train, of all things. There were 4 of us that went to San Diego, took 2.5 days by train, Pullman train at that. I thought the Marine Corps is pretty great. They travel like in first class. Found out differently after you get to boot camp. That was an education in itself.
And then I went to cadre school and became a corporal there in the cadre. And I just loved every minute of it. And I learned more there than I think I learned the 18 previous years of my life.
I had an uncle in World War I and told me that you ought to get in the Navy or the Air Force, because you have a place to sleep instead of a foxhole.
My uncle, who was a machine gunner in the 35th Division in World War I had listened to his war stories so long as a boy growing up, that I thought, boy, that's the place for me. And so I wanted to go in the Army.
But I remember my drill instructor and what he said in a real deep, gravelly voice. He says, "My name is Lynn, Gunnery Sergeant Lynn. From here on for the next 3 months, I will be your mother, your father." And he proved it. He was everything he said he'd be. But when we got through, we were Marines. The lessons that we learned there probably saved a lot of our lives.
It was all excitement to me. It was a completely different. But I had a hard time because I was a twin. And we were separated after boot camp. He went one way and I never saw him again until 1946.
When you just join a squadron, you don't get to lead the squadron right away. You're a wingman, and your job as a wingman is to protect your leader.
We organized this new outfit, the 1574th Engineers, and one of our many tasks was building bridges of various kinds.
Our job was to go in with the invasion, keep the beachhead clean, and any other ship that got hit would take them in tow, like a battleship or a cruiser.
We went to Iwo Jima, and the initial landing, our job was the 28th Marines were assigned to split the island and then head north to the mountain, Mount Surabachiyama. I got about halfway across the island, and that's when I got hit by mortar shrapnel and was evacuated. Was aboard a hospital ship on the 4th day when they raised the flag and tooted the horns and rang bells and everything and made a big issue of it. Still have a piece of mortar in my back of my neck, my Japanese souvenir.
They told us that if we got 25 missions finished, we could be excused and we could go home. Well, I finally got in 8, and the one that I got it on was a raid on the Kiel submarine base, and we had to bail out 27,000 feet into the Baltic.
We had to go to shore, and the landing craft that brought the big equipment in, we was getting ready to tow that off the beach. The shells was going off. Personnel shell was going off. Exploded over the beachhead. Some of us got hit, and I got hit in my arm here with a piece of shrapnel.
You don't think about getting hurt or anything like that. You know, you're invincible when you're that age. You all know that. If an accident's going to happen or somebody's going to get hurt, it's going to be the other guy. It's not going to be you.
On the way down, I was just floating down. I could see the shoreline going farther and farther away because the wind was blowing. Now, when I hit the water, it was extraordinarily cold. That was the problem. I could swim. The only hope I had was a marker buoy, obviously, in a shipping lane.
I know I lost 2 real good friends. One boy I went all the way through flying school with, and he was shot down in Angio. The other boy lost his life in Sicily.
When we made our landings, you know, you had all your gear on, all your combat gear, your helmet and everything else, when you had to climb down a cargo net into a landing craft. And that was probably the most difficult thing to do because the ship was a swaying. You come down that net, the little landing craft is at the bottom and it's swaying. So you got that in concern. You got to keep your weapon dry. You got all your pack on your back. I think that was about as rough a part until you got to the end and had to jump off in waist deep water and wade in because the landing craft couldn't go any further. Some of the guys didn't make that.
He never got close to somebody, but I did. I made a mistake and we lost him. And Maynard was his name. He was been in the Navy a couple of years before the war. And I was just a kid that came aboard, you know, he took me under his wing, and I hung right into him. Well, he lost his life, and it was hard to readjust. It was tied up the 2 ships together in Pearl Harbor. We were stepping in between the ships, and he fell between, hit his head. And I jumped in behind him, And when I went down there, that just dark as it could be, and engines roaring and everything, and I said to myself, what am I doing down here? I was after my buddy. I couldn't see nothing. I came back up. 2 other guys went down. We could not find them. From there on, I never got close to nobody because it's so hard when you lose a close friend.
When I was at a stage where I couldn't feel my legs anymore, reaction was of regret because I was married and I already knew that my wife was pregnant and I wouldn't be going home.
But he went in the Marine Corps, was at Guadalcanal, the first action of our service. And he was at Peleliu when the 1st Marine Division hit there, and of course at Okinawa, and that's where he was killed, in Okinawa, his 3rd action.
And then we had to pick up the bodies and stack them all over the side, and that was pretty hard to do. It was completely different what I thought I was going to get to serve.
A fishing boat showed up. It was a German fishing boat. They used their binoculars and apparently they spotted me in the air. That's what probably saved my life.
As the enemy got closer and you whip that airplane around to the right or left as tight as you could, I didn't know for sure whether I'd got him or not because I had to break off and get back to my leader and protect him. But another pilot did verify that I did.
The Germans, they were sending over these V2, which was a silent marauder, go over the English Channel and come down, and they didn't know where it would come down. And those things were just landing all over there. And when they'd hit you, boom, a big explosion. Those were scary.
You lose contact with who you're supposed to be with, and it's a mass confusion. The Marine Corps had another name for it, but we made it. We stumbled across it. There's no stopping.
The thing about the Air Force, you didn't come home as a cripple. Usually you either come home or you didn't come home.
We first of all were sent to a hospital. After that, they sent me to there was connected to this hospital, there was a military base. And I had 2 weeks of interrogation. That was a little rough. Came to WWII, and there was a better scene than I expected. The guy who was in charge of my incarceration, he began to console me. He says, look at it this way. For you, the war is over.
And I feel very fortunate to get out of 5 major engagements. I'm a lucky one. The heroes are still over there.
And boy, there's where you wonder, am I proud to be a human being or not? They would do the one like this to one another. It's unbelievable. I left that cemetery. I was different, no longer a kid.
You're getting your friends shot up and torn up and hauled away, and it's something you don't want to remember, and you try not to, but there's no forgetting.
As I look at the boys we lost, it still runs in my mind, why? Why them and not me?
It's difficult to understand sometimes how God works, but God knows what he's doing. The people in it don't.
And I thank him for blessing me, watching over me when I was a sinner. You just have to have faith. Mm-hmm. It's not my work, it's a gift for him. It's a gift. It's nothing what I've done. And I thank him for that.
I think what happened to me at WWII, I got into a group that was remarkable. It was truly remarkable. We had a Scottish Presbyterian minister who was a fighter, if there was one. He probably changed my philosophy of life.
A man who says that he doesn't believe in God and tells you he's been in war has never been in a foxhole. It's been said many, many times there are no atheists in a foxhole, and I believe that. The problem is that after you get out of the foxhole, it's so easy to forget who got you out.
Have that faith. Don't lose it. You feel, I wonder where God is sometime. It's a peace of mind knowing to believe.
I found out that I was a helper in that prison camp. I didn't know that.
You don't do anything on your own. If you don't think that God's doing it for you, just look around. Who puts the people there to help you? In my case, and for example, back on the battlefield, God provided the medics, the corpsmen as we call them, and those guys were great. Great.
I don't fear death one bit. I just hate to leave my wife. And God's put me here for some reason. And I'll find out when I go home.
I'm not a hero. I was just one of 16 million people that were there at that particular time. I was only one small part of that. But I'm proud of it.
It was the ladies who had received missing in action letters that were the real heroes or heroines of World War II.
I had the honor in my life, one of the biggest honors. I had been sent back to the 10th Replacement Depot to get some special parts for the tanks, just a few miles outside the west side of Paris. And I was in Paris when the war ended, and it was the most exciting thing I ever saw in my life. And there were 5 million people in the streets of Paris that night, VE Day, May 8th, 1945.
I'll be 89 this coming July the 2nd. And I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones that got to come home. And I got to see my twin brother. He made it. He lucked out, so he got to come home too.
But the guy who liberated us was old Patton, his 14th Brigade, Tank Brigade. And all at once, bingo, there was a tank, and it ran right over the front gate and came into. It was so shocking because it was so sudden. But I think what it really was that we realized that we were free.
I was overseas 21 months, but I hadn't seen my girlfriend for 23.
When I got out of the Navy, I almost stayed in. But I met my wife. She was an Army cadet nurse. And we got married in 1946, and we're still together.
After I got out of service, I came back here to Topeka, and I was 2 years after the war, and most of the big jobs were filled. I was determined I was going to get a job with security involved. I applied for the police department, fire department, telephone company, Santa Fe Railroad, Morrell Packing Company, everything else that was available around here, and the police department called first. So I spent 26 years on the Topeka Police Department. I ended up after 26 years as chief of police and retired from there.
When I got home, you know what it was like in 44. Things were in short supply.
Took a train back to Kansas City. And I was able to tell my wife that we were coming to Kansas City at a certain time, and she was there. And there was a little boy, 21 months older. Cutest little kid I ever saw.
I come home by boat, and I had already called Delray, that's my girlfriend, and we had written letters, and we both had agreed we were going to get married as soon as possible.
Got on the bus and came out West 10th Street and got off at 10th and Washburn, and I walked up that 2.5 blocks to my house, and it was in the morning. And I came up on the porch, and I knew that house so well. And in those days, we didn't lock our doors. I knew the door would be open, and I opened that door, and I said, "Hey, Mom." Mom! And she was out in the kitchen. And, oh, man, I can't describe it. There's no way to describe it, feeling like that.
What you need to do is to take the circumstances and consider them to be an opportunity in disguise.
The holidays, all of the holidays have a meaning and what they originated for, and I think people have gotten away from that. Now they're just a 3-day holiday for people. 4th of July, that's the establishment of our nation, the greatest nation on earth, the nation which we, as us country, and since my time, we've fought 6 wars for. There have been 6 wars since my war.
This country was founded on faith and independent. We have the freedom. Let's don't lose it. Let's don't lose it.